Good afternoon, everyone. Um, Today I am back. Um, Again, on Friday, we talked about K 12 enrollment audit checklist and the lead journey or the parent lead journey and distribution. Today I'm back with speaking specifically about clarity and how um, schools need to clarify like what their promise is to parents, right? Um, and so I'm going to ask you something that may make you uncomfortable, and before we even get into content, right? And if you are watching right now or you're watching this on the playback, you can type this in the chat, or you can type this in the comments below. But what makes your school different, or what makes your school unique? And I want you to use one sentence, no acronyms, no education jargon, no slogans. Just tell me what makes your school different from every other school a parent that may be looking for a school that's in your neighborhood could choose from, right? You've got 30 seconds to do this. Go. Right. So I see a couple, but I know it's rough, right? I'm reading through some of these and I'm noticing a lot of the same things, ultimately slogans, right? And stuff that looks like we believe every child deserves a quality education. I'm sure that every educator that educates or runs a school believes that every student deserves a quality education. Or I've seen where excellence meets opportunity, right? These are taglines, these are not promises. And um, that's not a criticism to you. It's actually the whole point of today's session, to be honest. Most schools have taglines, right? They sound very good, but almost none have a clear promise that they can tell a parent and a parent can believe in, but also that that school can follow through on that promise. And the difference between these two things um, is a parent feeling something versus a parent feeling nothing when they find you wherever they find you, whether it's online or a social media platform, right? So here's the thing about school leaders, and I used to be a school leader. I'm Gary Wade, former school leader turned, strategic growth partner, that ultimately uses storytelling to help schools grow, right? As a former school leader, right, like I was proud of the things that I helped build when I worked in schools, right? And school leaders, you should be proud of the things that you built, whether it's the dual language program, your college readiness program, your social emotional frameworks, your robotics lab, all those things you should be proud of. Those things took real effort to create and to build. So when it's time to market your school, naturally your instinct is to start with those things, right? Because those are the things that you're proud of. And you list features. You show everything you've got, and I understand why. But here's the problem with that, right? People aren't coming for a features checklist. Parents aren't coming for that. They're coming they're coming with a feeling that they have. They're coming with a worry. They're coming with a desire. They're coming with a hope that something will change for their experience with education for their child, right? And they want to know, is this the place that's going to take care of my kid? Is this the place where my kid is going to feel seen, either challenged and prepared for something real? Features don't answer those questions, and promises actually do. So I want you to think about it in this frame, right? Uh, think about car commercials, and 4 years, car ads would just list the specs of cars, horsepower, torque, safety ratings, and most of us heard these things and thought, I have no idea what those mean, right? Only car people knew what those mean. It's the same thing. The ed jargon that you're using, the taglines that you're using, only educational people understand those things, right? Um, but then those car companies shifted, and now the best car commercials don't lead with specs. They may show a dad strapping a kid into a car seat, or a teenager getting their first license, or a family driving through a storm and arriving safe. Right? They're selling the feeling of safety. They're selling the feeling of freedom, the freedom of arrival, the feeling of arrival. That's what your school needs to do. They need to lead with feeling and not a spec sheet, right? So I want to talk about this ed jargon that I keep on coming up, that I keep on mentioning, right? And I'm going to spend a minute on it because I see a lot of schools do this constantly, and it's worth calling out directly, right? So you've probably heard terms of SEL, MTSS, RTI, PBL, right? And these things are are real, real programs, real frameworks that have real value within a school building, within keyword within a school building. Your staff knows what those things are. Your leadership team knows what those things mean. Parents don't know what those things mean. And here's the thing: parents shouldn't have to know. If you put MTSS on your website or in your ad, and a parent has to Google it, you've now taken them from your ad. You've now taken them out of the feeling that they were feeling from your ad to now have to research some information about this term that you gave them, and you've lost them. But more importantly, you've made them feel like an outsider by doing that versus just speaking to them, right? You want to talk to parents the way you would talk to a friend who asked you about what your school does, right? You wouldn't use acronyms, you wouldn't use credentials. You would just tell them what you do and who's it for, and here's what happens when I'm at work, right? The test I always give schools is simple. I say, can you explain what makes your school different or your school unique to a parent at a bus stop? I normally say, like, yo, if you were in a in an adult location, a bar, having a drink, like, what would it sound like to talk to someone about, like, what the work that you do, right? Because that's in a relaxed location, a relaxed environment, and you're just going to speak freely. And can you do it in 60 seconds, right? Possibly using words that sixth graders know and would understand. And if you can do that, then you have clarity. If you can't do it, then you have a messaging problem, and it's probably dressed up as a marketing problem, but it's more about your messaging, right? Um, so when we talk about clarity, right, and thinking about that promise that you're trying to promise parents, the first item is it is speaking to the growth target for your next 90 days, right? Until you have a deadline, because you're not going off of a vibe, and this is not general hope that your enrollment goes up, right? Like, you have to have a target number that you want to hit so that you're driving towards something, a specific number with a deadline. And the reason that matters is for clarity, is that you can build a clear message if you don't know. You can't build a clear message if you don't know, you know, what you're trying to move or who you're trying to move, I would say. you know the metrics that I would pay attention to, if you don't know the numbers, that you're like, okay, so if I'm creating this number, what should it be? It should be inquiries. right? Or parents that are inquiring about your school, parents that want to know more information about your school. It should be tour bookings, right? Parents that want to walk through your building, open houses, parents that want to come and speak and see you in person, uh, application submissions, and even for fundraising, right? Donation commitments. Also, when you get on that side of it, when you're trying to scale your school, pick one of these numbers that matters the most to your school right now. And again, that would be the goal, right? You're picking a number that's supposed to hit a goal that you need to meet, right? Give you an ROI. Um, you write that number down, and with a 90-day deadline, that number becomes the thing that your content, your messaging, and your follow up system is all working towards. Without it, you're just posting and hoping, right? So, um, here's a question I want to ask: like, what number, or what metric th- would tell you your enrollment season was successful this year? What metric would that be? You can put it into the comments. Right. So the second checkpoint where we talk about clarity though is, can you say what makes your school different in one sentence without using any ed jargon or acronyms or anything of that nature, right? This is harder than it actually sounds. Not because schools aren't different from each other, because they completely are, but they're more than likely different from each other because of the culture that you have there, which your culture is developed by your people, and held by your people, right? um but because the things that make you different often live in that culture and with your approach, and things that are hard to put in words quickly, right? Because you're doing this every day, but you're probably not thinking about it, but you're living it on a regular basis. So let me show you what this looks like. And I'm going to put this up on screen so you'll see me turn to my screen. But I want to visually show you what this could look like, right? So here you can see, before thinking about messaging, right? And we worked with a client, a Chicago Collegiate, and they had a lot of slogans. Like if you look at their slogans before, it's breaking barriers, building futures, even having 100% graduation, 100% possible, which is true. Like they have a 100% graduation rate and 100% college acceptance rate, right? And I was like, yo, those things are great, right? But like, how do you form that in a way where it's like messaging and talking to a parent and promising, right? So we got two different variations right here. So for breaking barriers and building futures, right, we prepare students for college by removing barriers and earning scholarships, right? Little more focus, tells the why. Also, um, it also speaks to how, what's the obstacle that's happening. Then with 100% graduation and 100% possible, right? We have helping Roseland families believe 100% graduation and college acceptance is real, so their students can flourish in the careers that they actually want, right? A little more esocentric, right? It's more specific to the community that they're a part of, which is Roseland, Chicago. But yeah, these are like the messaging. This is like, hey, this is what we promise. This is what we do that's special. This is what is unique to us, right? And after we worked through these messaging, they landed on something closer to these two, and these were the pieces of messaging that we were able to use in their campaigns when we started running their social media and their paid campaigns. um and they grew. Like they were able to bring in tons of hundreds of leads into their pipeline on their own, right? Like with the aspect of changing. Part of that was changing their messaging, right? So I want to give you a simple structure, right? A simple structure to build your own version. It has three parts, and it's the who you serve, right? And you got to be specific about the community or the type of family that you serve. What makes you possible, right? What you make possible. Sorry, what you make possible, which is like what's the real outcome and not a program. And then the last piece is what does this mean for the future? Put those things together in plain language, and you've got a differentiating statement that actually means something to a parent who doesn't know you yet, right? So again, it is who you serve, what you make possible, and what does this mean for the future, right? The third the third piece of clarity here, or the third checkpoint in clarity that I want to speak to you about, uh, is one that a lot of school leaders haven't thought about from a marketing angle, right? And it's, do you know the costs per enrolled student at your school? And I'm sure that's most school leaders are going to say yes. Because if you don't say yes, then like you got to get on those numbers. You definitely need to know those numbers because those numbers affect your budget, right? Your holistic budget of like staff, um, equipment, resources, all of those things, not just marketing, but all of the other things, right? And I'm not just talking about the cost to educate a kid, but I mean, what does it each kid represent to your school in terms of funding or pupil revenue? Because once you know that number, you can start to justify and actually plan your marketing spend intelligently, right? So if your per pupil funding is, let's say, $8,000 a year, and your school is trying to fill 20 seats, that's $160,000 um, in revenue you're working towards in one enrollment cycle. Knowing that makes it a lot easier to decide whether a $2,000 video investment makes sense. It absolutely does. But schools that don't think in this term will hesitate to spend uh sorry yeah will hesitate to spend $200 on content because they're not even connecting the cost to the return. Clarity on these numbers changes how you make marketing decisions, actually, right? Like you can see, like, hey, there is going to be a level of ROI or return on investment with marketing if I know what those numbers are, right? You don't need a huge budget to market well, but you do need to understand what enrolled student is worth so that you can spend the intention instead of guessing, to be honest, right? So now pull I want to pull out the audit checklist, and let's score your clarity now. So if you're with me, you're here, we can do this together. On Friday, we scored lead journey and distribution. So now we're going to talk about the clarity section. And there's three questions here. I want you to be truly honest with yourself about where your school is. Um, so let's go through these questions. Let me actually share this for you all so you guys can see it. Right. So here we go. Let me spread it out a bit. Right, here we go. So clarity, right? So clarity is what you actually are promising families or supporters, right? So that first question is, do you have a written growth target for the next 90 days with a deadline? Again, it could be enrollment. It could be staff recruitment. It could just be awareness, right? Like you want a certain amount of numbers or eyes on you. We're specifically talking about enrollment because around this time isn't it's enrollment season, right? So what is that number? It uh inquiries? Is it applications? Is it open houses? Is it tours? Any of those things, you want to pick that number now, right? And then with choosing that metric, you want to make sure that you're thinking about 90 days out, right? Because there's things that you're going to need to work on to create um, your campaign that's going to be in within your lead journey. But I think also you want to give it time because it is going to take time to get to that number. So I think grade yourself now, right? Do you have a written goal? Just click yes or no. Number two, on the second one, can you say what makes your school different in one sentence without using any edu jargon or acronyms? You're checking that. If you can do it, you're leaving it blank if you can't. And then the last one is, do you know the cost per enrollments and do you know the cost per enrolled student so you can justify your marketing spend? I'm hoping that everyone checks this one. But if you don't, that's all right also. Now, let's talk about like what this means. So now you scored yourself and let's talk about what this actually means. 3 out of 3 means your foundation is clear. You know where you're going, how you're different, and what the math actually looks like. 2 out of the 3 means that there's probably one specific thing creating a drag in your enrollment. Uh, and then 1 or 0 means your messaging your messaging problem is really a clarity problem. And no amount of posting or ad spend is going to fix it until you build that foundation first. And here's the thing. I want to be honest about this. Most schools are going to score a 1 or a 2, just being real. Not because they're doing bad work, but because nobody taught them to think about enrollment in this way, right? Like you got people that are specialists. You went to school to be an educator, not to be a not to be a marketer, right? So, and I think that that was one of the gaps that I saw as a school leader and working with my principal and all the other higher ups is seeing that this is a gap. Um, school leaders are trained to run schools, but not to market them, and that's not a failure. That's just a gap, and the gap can be fixed. It's fixable ultimately. So I want to leave you with this before we close out. Right, clarity isn't about finding a better slogan. It's about making a real promise to families and being able to back it up with evidence, and it's true. Right, if your school is doing great work for students, the work should be visible in a way that talks about yourself through those students, through those families, not hidden behind acronyms, not buried in a program list, not summarized in a motivational poster, but out in front, in plain language, speaking directly to families you're trying to reach. When you have that, everything else in the audit just gets easier, right? Your story has something that it's anchored to. Your content has a clear message that you can repeat. Your lead journey has a promise to deliver on. Clarity is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of it, right? The full checklist, audit checklist covers these 4 areas of clarity, story, content engine, and lead journey. We did lead journey on Friday. We just finished with clarity, so now we have story and content engine to cover. So you just walk through clarity. Go download the free checklist, score yourself across all 4 sections, and find out exactly where your gap is, right? The link is in the description below and pinned in the chat. Um, you know, in the next session, we're going to go into story, and that the message people feel, not just understand. Because once you've got clarity down and you know what your promise is, the next question is, how do you make parents actually feel that promise? That's where the story comes in. Come back for that one. I'll see you tomorrow.